Welcome to the Complete Streets Commission's May 10th regular commission meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating in accordance with public health guidelines. I would like to introduce Complete Streets Commission members and city staff present. I'm Chair Sally Cole, and commissioners present include Brian Ottman, Jackie Sebrian, Vice Chair, Lizbeth King, and Ross Silverstein, who is dialing in remotely. Commissioners absent include Jackie Sebrian.
Nope.
Sorry, thank you. Katie Baruzzi. I'm not gonna do that again. Katie Baruzzi and Christopher Coleman. City staff present include Kevin Chen and Patrick Palmer. Patrick, would you please provide instructions to the commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Yes, and thank you, Chair Cole and members of the Complete Streets Commission. Welcome everyone to the May 10th Complete Streets Commission meeting, and thank you all for attending. At this time, we ask that the members of the commission please remain on screen for the duration of the meeting. You will control your own webcams and microphones. Staff will engage webcams and microphones to make presentations and respond to the members of the commission. For members of the public who wish to provide public comment for any item on tonight's agenda, after the chair calls for public comment on that item, our virtual attendees may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or a cell phone, you can press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name, and then you can step up to the podium to make your comment. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. We'll move on to item B1, which is very exciting, and that is welcoming two commissioners, well, re-welcoming one, which is Jackie Sebrian, our vice chair, was reappointed for another 4-year term by the city council. Yay! Woo. Okay. And then we've got a new commissioner filling our empty seat, Ross Silverstein. I want to welcome you, Ross, with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement for your term that's starting on our Complete Streets Commission, which I think we've all really found very meaningful and lively work. Ross, I personally appreciated your comments and your thoughtfulness around the Middle Avenue project, and I'm looking forward to working with you. Jackie and Ross, if you want to make any comments about your reappointment and appointment, this is the time. If you have anything you want to say.
Ross, you can go.
Sure, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for the warm welcome, and just truly looking forward to I guess first learning and then subsequently contributing to the commission here.
Absolutely.
And then also looking forward to meeting everyone in person when I get back to the States.
Absolutely. It's really exciting to learn how this works and then be able to contribute, and we will definitely help as colleagues.
And I would just say that I'm excited to continue doing all the work that we've been doing, and probably still to continue learning all the things that I don't really know. So I'm
Absolutely.
excited.
Yes. And for the public out there, just a quick endorsement for working on these commissions. It's really good work, and you feel like you're really helping your community. So keep applying for these roles. Okay, so for item C, reports and announcements. Under reports and announcements, city staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest regarding matters within the jurisdiction of this commission. No commission discussion or action can occur on any of the presented items. Kevin Chen, do you have any reports and announcements?
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening to everyone here. Kevin Chen, Senior Transportation Engineer, also the Complete Streets Commission liaison here in attendance. So a few updates that might be of interest to the commission, a couple projects, and then maybe a little bit of a summary about the city council meeting last night, which involved the capital improvement program conversation, which I know to some of you are very, very much interested in. So project update, we did receive city council approval for the Ravenswood bike lane project, so yay. The next step, what that means is that the next step, when we go out and complete the resurfacing part of the project, we'll then move on and continue the installation of the bike lanes. So that's really exciting. And with that, you would be able to see a complete network on Ravenswood, both from El Camino all the way to where MA is at Middlefield. So really excited to move that one forward. Also, if you recall, the intersection of University and Menlo, where we came to the commission with some what we call quick build projects, where we're looking into reducing the lane, one of the turning lanes, the right turn lane specifically on Menlo, in favor of shortening the crossing distance for pedestrians and bicyclists that are using that crosswalk, and hopefully maybe a couple more striping and signage improvements that we can do around that intersection. So that particular project also got the blessing to move forward. So we'll be moving forward into the actual design of that pilot as well. So those are both exciting projects moving forward. Continuing on the conversation of last night's meeting regarding kind of what we call the capital improvement program. Typically, it's a 5-year program. In this case, we're more strictly looking at the next fiscal year, so July to July of the calendar year, so to speak. I think a lot of the conversation obviously revolve, capital improvement programs like the streets and other things. In terms of transportation, I think the main conversation revolved 2 particular items that might be of interest to you. One is the quiet zone, where the city council did dedicate some funding resources toward the design of the first 2 crossings. So as if some of you recall, the presentation that came before you a couple months ago was regarding sort of the overall arching of the 4 crossings, right? In this case, we did get the funding, or the city council decided to allocate funding sources for the first 2. So that would be Ravenswood.
Okay.
And yep. And that would be a kind of a continued conversation. Now, everything that occurred last night is sort of the direction that we got from the city council. There will be another meeting where we come back, sort of provide a quick summary of what we heard. Some of the additional instructions that we got last night will be kind of lumped into, because there's some additional homework that need to be done based on the feedback that we got.
What's the specifics in terms of dollars they allocated?
So specifically, the actual dollar amount right now, I think we're looking at about 450K. Now, that is not necessarily, it's a number that staff prepare. However, all of that effort is actually going to be done by Caltrain, and we have not received on their estimate yet. So now the number that we got is based on consultants, some of our past experience that came up with that number. However, it is not the actual number that we'll be getting from Caltrain. So that's more just a point of reference for now. Once we have that number, I'll be happy to share with the commission. The second one, oh, sorry, Vice Chair.
I do have a quick question about the quiet zone thing. There was.
Do you mind turning on your mic, Vice Chair?
Of course, I'll turn my mic on. There was a gentleman who did a public comment on it that mentioned something about like radar and wayside horns or something. Is that a thing that is used anywhere here? And like, how feasible is that thing he talked about?
That's a great question. Actually, we have our Assistant Public Works Director that might be able to
We do?
remotely, not in
hello.
person. Yeah, that might be able to answer the question. So just give me 1 second.
Yeah. It's like a magic sound that occurs, and then
Hi, Commissioner members. Hugh Louch, Assistant Public Works Director for Transportation. Two separate things. Like one question that was raised last night at the council meeting was about how the vehicles are detected. So the way the 4-quadrant gates work, right, is there exit gates. When the exit gates go down, they don't go down if they detect a vehicle inside the crossing. And so he was talking about like how that detection happens. And to be clear, that's what Caltrain will design. And I know Mr. LeBrun reasonably well. He's very involved in rail issues. I don't doubt sort of the information he was providing, but ultimately that's sort of like Caltrain decision about how that would get designed, because they're their gates. So that's kind of maybe the short answer to that. And then the other question he raised is this issue of wayside horns. And so wayside horns, and by the word horn, you probably guess they're not a quiet zone. But what they do is that instead of the train blowing the horn on the train, there are horns stationed at each crossing, and then the horns. So it's the same amount of horn activity, if you will, but they're only blown at the crossings. So in terms of who's impacted by it, it's still anyone who lives like right next to a crossing, say, would have essentially the same impact. But all the people who live sort of between the crossings would have much reduced impact because the horns are sort of pointed at the vehicles essentially on the crossings. And so it has, instead of it spreading along the corridor, it's essentially at these fixed intervals. So that is something that we could do. It's not a quiet zone. It's entirely different thing. It would definitely reduce noise for many people, but it would, as I know, sort of still have horns, for some folks who live near the crossings.
Thanks for that clarification.
You are welcome.
I had a quick question.
Yes, Commissioner Altman.
I thought it was for,
Sorry, Commissioner Altman, if you don't mind turning on your mic, so that way I think Hugh might be able to hear the question. Yep.
so my mic's on.
Oh, is it?
Am I still remedial on
Oh,
this?
yeah, you need to do the.
For what it's worth, and I can hear you, but I think you have to speak pretty directly into them for it to be caught up at the appropriate volume.
Thank you. Am I okay now? I thought it was that all four needed to be done to affect the quiet zone through Menlo Park. Did I hear that right last time? That all four crossings needed to be addressed, otherwise Caltrain would not change the horns?
Yeah, so let me maybe respond to that and clarify that. So all four crossings are so close to each other that any quiet zone will be for all four. There's no, there was a little bit of a tense moment last night because there was some misunderstanding, but there is no, like, you do just two and you have a quiet zone for just two of them. However, the sort of Federal Railroad Administration, who manages or sort of administers quiet zones and certifies that they're allowed, if we make improvements at two of the crossings, specifically at Ravenswood and Oak Grove, then we can have a quiet zone for all four because the average risk of all the crossings is lower than it would be today with horns in use. And because that is the sort of outcome of making those improvements from FRA's, using FRA's method, we only have to make improvements at two to get the quiet zone.
Okay, great, thanks.
And Hugh, just another clarifying question. Did you think it was well known at the meeting or among the interested public that the horn would still be sounded at the intersection, just not in between? Like, so if you lived, what you said earlier, like if you lived close by, you would still be hearing it? Wouldn't change much?
For the wayside horns, for the presentation for Mr. LeBron, you mean?
Oh, is that in relation to the wayside horns? Okay, skip my
Yes.
question. Okay, I understood. Sorry. Got it. Okay. Kevin, do you want to proceed?
Yeah,
Is there anything else? Yep.
actually, I'll just go ahead and conclude my announcements.
Yes, please.
Okay, just one more project that
Yes.
that I was going to mention, which is the El Camino Real, the bicycle lane project. I think some of you might have
Yeah.
heard that, and what that meant from last night's meeting is that staff will be coming back to the city council with an update on the previous sort of milestones that have been achieved, sort of where the project was stopped at, so that way people know the status up to the point that it was paused. So we'll be coming back to the city council for some guidance on what exactly to do, what the next steps are going to be for that project. So do stay tuned for that one as well.
Okay. Kevin, thank you for your report. I have one clarifying question. When you said that the city council authorized moving forward with the design of the pilot for the enhancements at the intersection of Menlo and University. I just wanted to confirm that they move forward aligned with the staff report on option 1.
That's correct.
Okay, excellent. And I also just wanted to tell the rest of the commissioners that Jackie and I attended the city council meeting last night, discussion surrounding the decision to make the Ravenswood bike pilot permanent. And we both reflected after our public comments that we thought it was important for commissioners, it doesn't have to be the two of us, we can talk about that, but for commissioners to attend city council meetings when possible, when these items that we've discussed and are making recommendations upon come up, because it's nice to have like some commissioners or one commissioner at least there to, be there to sort of provide the context for our decision and maybe answer questions. So we felt good about the fact that we had attended. All right, perfect. Well, thank you very much, Kevin, for the reports and announcements. We're going to move on to public comment. Under public comment, members of the public may address the Complete Streets Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. You are not required to provide your name or residence or city residence, but it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Patrick, could you please call for general public comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair Cole. To those who might have just joined us virtually, if you do have a public comment to add, please just use the raised hand feature or press *9 if you're calling in. And I believe we will take the virtual comments first. And if you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name and you can step up to the podium to make your comment. It does not look like we have a remote comment at this time. So Kevin, I will leave it to you.
Great, thank you. Through the chair, we do have a public speaker. Her name is Adina Levin.
Adina. Hello. Oh, make sure we can.
On? Should it be on? Okay.
There we go.
Good evening, Complete Streets Commissioner Adina Levin, Menlo Park resident. And I was interested in the Samtrans presentation and planning to watch. And I was coming in from the train and realized, oh, I can just come into the
Good.
room, which I did. And in coming over, that generated a general public comment, because in trying to walk in from the train, there's a lot of construction happening. And it just says sidewalk closed. There isn't any signs for a detour, instructions for a detour, any indication other than, golly gee, you should have driven a car. And so I was wondering, and this may be something that through the chair, if there were a yes/no question, I would appreciate it, about does the city have a policy for pedestrian detours and bypasses when there is construction? I mean, obviously, when there's roadway construction, there's a pretty good amount of work to make sure that people can continue to drive.
Mhm.
And I was wondering whether the city does have such a policy, just yes, no. And given how this is going over here in a well-used pedestrian crossing, this also might be something that if we don't have a policy, that this body may wish to ask her a report on that topic. And if, or even if there is, so this body may be interested in following up on that. So that was my general public comment. And I like, if there's just a yes/no question, I would welcome the answer off
Adina,
the
can
air.
I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Can we pause her time while I ask? Is that possible? I just don't want to take her time. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
My clarifying question is, are you talking about Alma and Ravenswood? I just want to make sure that I know. Or are you talking about Laurel and Ravenswood?
No, it's closed at the Alma and
Alma.
Ravenswood.
Okay, thank you. And Kevin, can you provide any general information on the way the staff approaches rerouting pedestrians?
Yeah, so the short answer to Ms. Levin's question is, yes, we do have a policy that evaluates it. Typically what happens is construction activities come in, the contractors will come in, will come in with what we call a traffic control plan, which typically looking at where the construction zones are, some of the detours that would need to take place, typically involving bike, pedestrian and vehicles as well. So those are things that we review prior to granting the approval for the construction to occur. So I made a note of the location that Ms. Levin mentioned. My understanding is that the traffic control plan that was approved had a detour plan, but so I'll look into that and see what happened there. So
Mhm.
thank you for bringing that to our attention.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Maybe she does. She still got that 1 minute, 8 seconds. Well, if we are done with the call for general public comment, we'll move on to regular business. Under regular business, the commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require commission approval. The first regular business item tonight is E1, accept the Complete Streets Commission minutes for April 17th of 2023. Any clarification from the commission before I take public comment? I have two things, Kevin. My first one is in D4 of the minutes. I just don't either remember this being discussed or it's a typo, but it says regarding the discussion around the design of El Camino Real improvements around intersections. And it says the commission discussed right turning truck onto Menlo Avenue.
Right, so there was a conversation, so
Okay.
this is that corner on
Yeah.
the Mike Pisa corner, and
Yeah.
specifically a conversation regarding kind of the turning radius, some of
Yeah.
the signal heads that got hit there, the reasoning for kind of the recommendation of a bulb out. If you recall, one of the recommendations for that particular intersection is that we're doing a bulb
Oh,
out.
the truck
Right,
and then the median.
I believe
Got it.
Commissioner King might have brought that topic up.
Yeah. Could we possibly, this is really minor, but could we possibly rephrase that to something like discussed, like, I don't know, how to accommodate or something? Because I don't know if the public would read that and know exactly what that meant.
Yeah, we can
Maybe
add some
slight editing.
context into why that conversation came up
Yeah,
or that
thank you.
particular, yeah, so I can do that, yeah.
Thank you. I think I might have had one other thing. Hold on, let me just quickly look. No, I don't. Actually, I had one other thing I wanted to. Oh, yeah. When we talked at length about the Ravenswood bike pilot in this meeting, I thought at one point, and the staff made this really interesting point about how during the pilot, pedestrians commented that the crosswalk felt safer, maybe because of more visibility or something like that. And that might have been in the staff report. I'm not sure. If it was in the staff report or in the staff report to the council, then we're covered. But I just wanted to, because I think the commissioners were like, that's excellent. You know, I mean, I think the commissioners have a very positive reaction to the fact that that was maybe an incidental or unexpected benefit from taking away that lane of traffic. And since it seemed like that was of some value to us, that finding, maybe there's a way we could put it in the list of things that we discussed around the bike pilot. Hugh, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, if I may, through the chair, thank you for the question. So to be clear, the survey findings were that most people who said they were pedestrians thought there was not a change in safety. And the point I think I might have made was that we didn't think that was too surprising because there are elements of the overall project, once we do the resurfacing, that will make the median space wider where pedestrians cross. And so because those weren't in, we didn't expect. So we didn't have very many people say it was less safe. We had more say it was more safe than less safe, but most said it was no change.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for clarifying. So we'll just
You're
wait
welcome.
and watch and see what people's, pedestrians' observation is about safety once the pilot is permanent and that crosswalk improvements take place. All right. Thank you, Hugh, for the clarification. All right. Well, then, Patrick, can you call for public comments on the item of the accepting the minutes of the April 17th meeting?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Chair Cole. If you're tuning in remotely, please just raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you're calling in. It does not look like we have a public comment at this time.
All right, then, do I have a motion and a second to accept the minutes? All right, Elizabeth, motion, and do I have a second? Commissioner Sebrian. Kevin, will you take our vote?
Great, thank you. So we do have a motion and a second on the table here. So for those that would like to vote yes to approving the minute with the recommended edit to add some more additional context to D4, specifically regarding the corner of Menlo and El Camino. If you can raise your hand. Great, I think that's unanimous. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now be moving on to item E2, receiving an update from city staff, from Samtrans on new Ride Plus micro transit services in East Palo Alto and Bell Haven neighborhood.
Great,
Kevin, we'll introduce
thank you,
Kevin.
Madam Chair. I'm just going to go ahead and provide a brief remark and then turn the table over to Samtrans team. So very excited to have both Chelsea and Kate, with us tonight. So they are Samtrans representative here to really share with this sort of new, what we call the Ride Plus micro transit service for both the city of East Palo Alto as well as Bell Haven area. So really excited to have them here with us tonight to share this like pilot program that they are testing. So go ahead and I'll just pass the baton to the ladies.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for having us here this evening. My name is Kate Christopherson. I am a service planner at Samtrans, and I'm here tonight with my colleague, Carl C. Chang. And we are here to introduce, as Kevin just said, our new service starting in June. It's microtransit that we're calling Ride Plus. Next slide, please. All right, so this evening we're going to provide some background on Reimagine Samtrans, which was a study we did over the last few years, and one of the recommendations was microtransit. I will go over what microtransit is, some of the features will be involved with this new service, some fixture out changes that will be happening at the same time, how we're gonna do public outreach and marketing for this new service, and I'll go over the timeline. Okay, starting us off. So between 2019 and 2022, Samtrans conducted a comprehensive operational analysis to see how we could better serve the people of San Mateo County. This included data analysis and multiple rounds of public outreach. The final approved network included consolidated routes and streamlined services to improve efficiency. This allowed us to create more direct and frequent routes, but we also did have to reduce coverage in some areas. Reimagine Samtrans is being implemented in phases, with the first phase happening last August, and the second phase, which includes microtransit, will happen this summer. Future phases will follow in the future. Okay. So Samtrans will be adding 2 new microtransit zones in June as part of Reimagine Samtrans Phase 2. The 2 zones are Half Moon Bay and East Palo Alto Bell Haven. Historically, these have been more difficult areas to serve well with fixed route transit. So we're exploring this new approach to public transit with microtransit. The new service will be called Samtrans Ride Plus, and the goal of the new service is to expand mobility options in these areas, advance equity, and provide high quality, efficient, and sustainable service in areas that are hard to serve well with fixed route service. Okay, so what is microtransit? So for those of you unfamiliar, it's on-demand public transit that's dynamically routed based on trip requests in real time or scheduled in advance. So it's similar to Uber and Lyft. Those using the app will be able to see real-time pickup arrival information, and trips will be shared, and they must start and end in one of those defined zones. So for the zone closest to us here in Menlo Park will be the East Palo Alto Bell Haven service area, which will include the entire city of East Palo Alto, plus the Bell Haven neighborhood in Menlo Park. The service will be available every day from 6 in the morning till 10 in the evening. And again, all trips must start and end in this zone. So to be clear, you have to start and end within the zone shown here on the right. You can't go between this zone and Half Moon Bay. For those who want to travel outside of the zone, we will have the bus stops in the app and on the website that you can choose as your final destination. So you can connect to routes 280, 281, 296, or the 296L. And in terms of fares, we're going to accept all current Samtrans fare types. So that's a big difference between this service and a traditional rideshare like Uber and Lyft. It's not going to be based on distance or time. It's the same flat fare you would get if you took the bus. So some features of Ride Plus. The users will be able to book a trip with 3 different options. You can download an app on your smartphone, use the website, or call customer service if you don't have access to a smartphone or a computer. Those using the app, again, will be able to have automated messages, updating them on their trip and getting real-time arrival information. Most of our vehicles in the fleet will be wheelchair accessible and able to transport up to 7 passengers at a time. And the software will be using an algorithm to create routing efficiencies for those traveling in the same direction. So like the bus, do expect to share your ride, but it should be hopefully an efficient ride. So with the introduction of Ride Plus, we will have 2 fixed route changes in this area. First, Route 280. So Route 280 traditionally has been a route that serves hard to reach areas, and it has a long winding routing. So we will be streamlining it to speed up the trip so that people can get to their destinations faster. This is one of our more low ridership routes, so we will be reducing frequency and reallocating some of that service to higher demand areas. But those using the 280 can again use this new service, Ride Plus, to make some of those trips. In addition, so the route that more affects the Belhaven neighborhood is Route 281. We will be extending that route down to Stanford University, and we'll be improving route frequency to every 20 minutes on weekdays and every 30 minutes on weekends. So with this new service, we want to be able to share how to use it and make sure people know it's coming. So we'll be doing extensive marketing and outreach. We'll have a dedicated landing page on samtrans.com. We'll be doing a social media campaign, press release, educational brochures and posters, in-person multilingual outreach, and we will be partnering with local community groups to help us engage the community. All print and digital materials will have unique Ride Plus branding and will be in multiple languages. And we also would love to hear from the commission on how else we can get the word out in Belhaven. So in terms of timeline, we are currently finalizing all of our marketing materials and we are starting to move into our outreach phase. Samtrans Ride Plus will start service with the other Reimagine Phase 2 route changes on Sunday, June 18th. And for those using the new service, we will be offering free rides on Ride Plus for the first 6 weeks to encourage people to go out and try it. So with that, that concludes our presentation and we are available for any questions you may have.
Sorry, I was taking notes. All right, thank you so much for that presentation. Is there any clarification from the commission before we take public comment? I had a few questions, but do any commissioners have any? Okay. All right, Kate, I have a couple. It was really interesting to hear about what you're doing, and I really appreciate that you were looking closely at hard to serve areas. You know, I bet those are really tough. So thank you. I think I just had a couple. One was, why was it hard to serve these particular areas with fixed routes? I'm just wondering what was the nature of that problem?
Sure, thank you for your question. So I think there's 2 things that come to mind for me. in terms of the physical layout and nature of these communities, well, for example, Half Moon Bay tends to be more rural in nature, and some of the streets are very narrow or they're dirt roads.
Yeah.
In East Palo Alto, it tends to be a more cut off area because of the 101 barrier.
Mm.
So there's also, it's just hard to do transit well in some areas. You do need a lot of higher density. So that's another reason, like, for example, Half Moon Bay was considered in our final recommendations. It's just, it's hard to provide frequent service in more rural areas.
Yeah.
As you'll see, that's not the case in Bellhaven and East Palo Alto. And these tend to be neighborhoods that have been underinvested in by Samtrans historically. And so we want to provide those resources to provide more options to folks.
Yeah, and I really appreciate some of the design elements, like the fact that you kept it at flat fares. I think is great. So another question, right. You were looking at that, we were looking at that slide where it said there'd be reduced frequency. I think it was on, maybe the bus line was called 280. I wondered if where you did reduce the frequency, was that based on your ridership data? Was it based on a survey that you administered? How did you make those decisions?
Yeah, that analysis was done as part of our Reimagine Samtrans study that happened between 2019 and 2022. So I wasn't here at the time, so I can't say with certainty, but when they did do the analysis and the outreach, it was found that there was lower ridership on Route 280 and there were demands for service in other areas. So it was determined to reduce frequency on the 280, but we've been waiting to do it in combination with introducing Ride Plus so that people using the 280 still have an option to connect to a more frequent route like 281 that serves some of the same corridors.
Okay, and so can we throw that slide up again? I just had a question. So I just want to pretend for a moment that you're a rider. I don't know if that's possible is that you, Kevin, who would put the slide back up, or? I just want to make sure I understood the input.
Yeah, so I think Kate is doing that right now. So
Thank you,
just give her
Katie.
a second.
Sorry, thank you, Kevin. So here, does this mean, for example, Route 280, we're reducing frequency? So if I'm a rider, maybe on those avenues or whatever, and I want to go to the Stanford Shopping Center, it's just fewer, it just runs less frequently. That's the bottom line.
Yes.
It still runs just less frequently. Okay.
Yes.
And then with 281, I thought it was interesting that it was extended to Stanford University and the hospital. I assumed that extending to the hospital was a distinct, like a very intentional decision on your part to make that destination more accessible. Is that the case?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Well, I think where we left off your presentation. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Seabrand. Yes, of course.
When we looked at the on-demand zone, is there a reason? So it looks like it kind of stops there where sort of Terminal Avenue and Onetta Harris. But we have, I don't know what the technical term for a ton of new housing is, but there's a lot of new housing coming up in there. And so I'm wondering, I don't think it's going to be ready by June. So I guess part of my curiosity is, would there be plans to extend into that area? Because, right. And then along with that is the section of Menlo Park that is, I don't even know what they call that, Pacific Shores, like the apartments that are over off Haven Avenue.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Because I don't know like what sort of transit serves that. I just know that it's also Menlo Park, but it's not colored into this area. So part of my question is around Constitution Avenue and the ability for because there's high school over there, and whether that would serve this or not.
Right. So yeah, you're right. The zone cutoff is like the Dumbarton Railroad corridor over starting at Terminal and going northeast. And that was found, that was part of the Reimagine effort, that they found like this would be the zone to start with. That was the final recommendation. So at this time, we're starting with the zone as defined. That doesn't mean in the future that the boundaries won't change. Of course, once service starts, we're going to monitor and see how everything's doing. And if the service is successful, it is possible we could extend in the future. But for right now, we're starting with what was recommended in the study.
Can I just follow up one more time? First, I also want to say, Kate, I love this idea and I'm super happy to see some kind of out of the box thinking for how to serve this neighborhood. If I'm imagining, like, just so I understand how it works, like if I wanted to go from my house on Hamilton Avenue or right near it to like Target over in East Palo Alto, I could pull up the Ride app and it would pick me up at my house and take me to Target along with whatever other people it scooped up on the way. And then-
Yes, yeah, as long as your origin and destination are within the defined service area, yes, that's how it would work.
And then after I finished, I would pull up the app again and tell you that I wanted to ride back home.
Yes, and you can even schedule your trip in advance. So if you know you're going to be at Target for an hour, you could schedule it a trip out for an hour from now, and the vehicle would be ready for you when you're done with your trip at Target.
That is really awesome. And I hope that we use it enough that it makes it a really worthwhile thing. I'm excited to share it with my neighborhood.
Yeah, we're excited too.
Commissioner Altman, thank you, Kate.
I too think this is just a great idea. Just so I'm clear about how this works, if I'm in that zone and I want to get to Stanford Hospital, I can take the ride sharing to 281 bus and then take 281 bus. Is that how it works?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And are there any target service levels, like how long typically, what's your target for how long somebody might wait for the ride?
Our goal is to have the wait time be less than 25 minutes
Okay.
from the moment you book the trip until a vehicle arrives.
Okay, that's fantastic. The third question is, has this been tried in other metropolitan areas?
Yes, it is popping up all over. I would say in areas that you're maybe familiar with. I know in the South Bay, they have it in Milpitas and Morgan Hill. And there's some areas up in the Tahoe region. There's, and I think Sonoma or up in the North Bay also have similar services. So it's popping up around California, and it is across the country as well.
And the takeaway learnings from those other implementations?
Yeah, that is a good question. I would say one thing I recently learned was, because we're using technology where people can see their vehicle in real time, even if people have to wait longer, just knowing on the app that the vehicle is coming, people are okay with that versus, well, not everyone, but like more people are okay with it versus when sometimes when you're waiting for a bus and it doesn't show up, you're wondering like, is this ever going to come? Should I try something else? So that was something I thought that was interesting that recently happened.
Great.
Other
Thanks.
lessons.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Thanks.
That is interesting. I'm curious, did you, I mean, it does sound from your conversation with Commissioner Allman that you have other examples and other municipalities to draw from experience. In looking at this, I'm just curious if there was any kind of testing or dry run or pilot to get a sense of ridership or some of those other operational issues.
Staff will definitely be out testing before we launch this on the 18th.
Okay, cool. Yes,
I
Commissioner.
have a
Oh, pardon me.
question.
Yes. Commissioner Silverstein.
So it's been shown frequently that riders will almost always take the mode of transportation that is the most expedient to their trip. And so if we can make, in whatever capacity, public transportation take faster than a car, then people will often do that. I'm unfamiliar with either these routes or the zone. Is there anything in this area that would prioritize public transit in terms of either priority lanes or transit signal priority, or things where we can not have either a bus or one of these Ride Plus vans just stuck in generic traffic?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I don't believe there are any transit only lanes or transit signal priority in this area along either of these routes. But yeah,
Okay.
you're right.
Yeah,
That would
it always just
definitely
pains
help.
me whenever I see a bus just stuck in behind all the individual cars.
Mhm. We do have some transit signal priority along El Camino Real, and we are exploring adding transit lanes on that corridor, but I don't believe we have it for either of these routes currently.
Okay, I think we're done with the clarifying questions from the commission. So we'll move to public comment. Just as a reminder, at the end of Kate's presentation, she did say that this would launch on June 16th with, I think, 6 weeks of free ridership, and that they are asking for advice or suggestions about how to get the word out to Bellhaven. So Patrick, could you please call for public comments on this item?
Thank you, Chair Cole. If you are tuning in remotely, please just raise that virtual hand or press *9 to provide your public comment. All right, I will return the meeting to the chair.
Through the chair, I do have a public
Kevin.
comment card here. So
Yes.
Ms. Adina Levin.
Yes. Good evening.
Sorry, Adina, give me 1 second. Let me turn on the mic. It's a tricky one. There we go. Good to go.
All right. Good evening, commissioners, Menlo Park staff, and Samtrans staff. Adina Levin, Menlo Park resident and occasional transit advocate. I have I'll start with a suggestion in terms of the outreach in Menlo Park, and then ask a couple of questions that, if the chair believes is of broader interest, may seek responses. In Bellhaven, there is a Bellhaven climate change community team that's been meeting regularly, working on the environmental justice element of Menlo Park's general plan. And it's continuing to meet regularly. For example, its next meeting is Thursday, May 18th at 6 o'clock. It's organized by CRC Climate Resilient Communities. And then there's another group called formally Bellhaven Empowered and informally kitchen table chats that where Bellhaven residents gather and to engage in a variety of local civic issues of interest to Bellhaven residents. And so those are two places that people might be interested in learning more about this and potentially providing feedback. And I can provide contact information if the Samtrans team wants it. And Commissioner Sebrian probably has the contact information too.
Thank you.
So the question that the questions that I had, I was glad to hear the goal about the wait time. Was wondering if there were any other metrics for considering this project a success. Another question I had is there's a community amenity being included or proposed in the community amenities for the Bayfront area, and one of them is a shuttle. So my question is, has there been any study for the shuttle that would relate and inform the Samtrans route, which is, obviously going in now? I had the very similar questions about serving the Haven area as Commissioner Sebrian did, and a related topic to there was that also gets you to a transfer to the 270, which gets you to Redwood City. So I think that would be another purpose in potentially extending to that area eventually. My other question is, are there going to be free intra-agency transfers? So if I'm transferring to the 296, is that a free transfer? And can you pay with Clipper? So those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Levin, for your questions and also for your recommendations for outreach. All right, let's see. In terms of metrics, yes, we are in the process of finalizing those right now. So we will share those once we have them developed, but they're not ready at this meeting right now. In terms of the future Bayfront development and the shuttle going in with that development, we are happy to coordinate with any developments in the future to see if any efficiencies can be made and work together to serve all these communities. As of date, we have not, but happy to coordinate once that project is further along. And then in terms of transfers, the transfers will happen the same as they do currently with Samtrans routes. So yes, you can use your Clipper card, and Clipper card users will have free transfers within a 2-hour period.
I have another question.
Commissioner Sebran.
This might be something that already exists and I just don't know about it. Is there an age requirement to use this?
That is a good question. We are still finalizing some of those policies. I know in other agencies, they do set requirements on how old someone must be to travel alone. So we're in the process of figuring that out. We will also, related to small children, we do have to follow the California safety seatbelt rules. So those traveling with small children will need to provide a child seat and install it themselves when riding in the vehicle with small children.
Okay, can I ask, I have one more question. They just keep rolling through. I know you're still developing the metrics. And again, if I overlook the answer to this other question, the sort of, I don't know if it's a pilot, but if it is a pilot, is it going, do we know how long it's going to run? And what I'm really digging at is sometime in February of next year, we have a really awesome new community building coming in, and it would be great to still have this kind of thing available to see if people are using it to get to our new community center.
Yes, thank you for your question. This is not a pilot program. It is a new service. So it should be able to serve the new community center when it opens next year.
Yes, Commissioner Roman.
Again, I think this is so cool. What are just strategically, what are the hurdles to really scale this out, massively scale it in terms of offerings beyond just the Bellhaven area? Like, any thoughts or is it that this is an experiment that you might see how you could scale it, massively scale it?
Yeah, so microtransit has been done before, but it is the first time Samtrans is doing it. So for the time being, these 2 zones will be like an experiment for us to test it out and see how it works against our metrics. I do know that because it is a smaller vehicle, it does tend to be a more expensive service to provide. That being said, we're hoping people find it really easy to use, and if we have high ridership. So pending the riderships there, like, we're happy to explore other options of expanding. But first, we want to start out with these 2 zones, see how they do.
Thank you. We pivoted away quickly, just briefly from public comments. So I wanted to check in with Patrick and see if we were, if there were any comments, and also Kevin, just to confirm.
Yeah, no more public comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
No more from Patrick. Okay. Well, then let's go back to ask the commission for feedback. And I just wanted to, start by concurring that I'm really pleased to hear about this. And I think it's definitely filling a need that, filling a demand that exists and is unserved. So thank you. I think that I'm focusing a bit on the question you asked us toward the end. How can we get the word out? And I look to other commissioners as well to join in on this, and maybe ideas for other folks that we can connect you with. But one of the questions I had was, in terms of getting the word out, are there particular types of riders or particular constituencies within these communities that you think this would especially benefit, that you are just very interested in targeting and make sure that you reach? So as we think through, how can they get the word out? Maybe in some instances, that's a targeted effort to particular populations.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Chelsea. I'm a new government and community affairs officer. There isn't really any particular population we're trying to target, but for traditionally people who, might not have as much access to cars or transit isn't as readily available. So we're looking at kind of different events and as well as the group that Adina mentioned. So we're looking at the different events like farmers markets, the city's Juneteenth event. We're kind of compiling lists of the different events in the city where we can get the word out more broadly.
Okay. Any commissioners have any feedback on that point?
Well, I would definitely say that the community mobile market that comes on Sunday is probably a great opportunity because a lot of people do show up to that. And I wonder if outreach has also been done like at the high school, because it is an area, like I think high school kids are a great market for something like this because they don't all have the transportation to get to the places they want. And this might be a nice way to use it. So, and then they can also like share with their families about this awesome service and senior programs. But our senior center has moved from Bellhaven to Burgess Park at the moment.
Thank you for that feedback.
I'm assuming that you've thought of Nextdoor, et cetera, but I wonder if they're moms groups. Because I imagine if you were a mom without a car during the day, this would really be helpful. I don't know if that's on your radar. But that would be one of my suggestions.
Start with Pam Jones and see where it goes.
Pam Jones. So yeah, so I thought that would be helpful. I think that obviously Vice Mayor Cecilia Taylor has a lot of excellent insights into how to reach people in Bellhaven, and in addition, Pam Jones. So I don't know, Kevin, do you know if Cecilia is on the call? I don't think I have the capacity to look at the attendees. I'm not sure.
She is not at the
She's not?
moment.
Okay.
no.
So we can swing back with her and help make that connection. I think that's a good idea. Maybe we'll follow up with Kevin. Kate and Charles, I know you've been in contact with him, so he'll be our point of mutual connection. But I think that it might be useful to bring Vice Mayor Taylor into the conversation and Pam Jones as well. I was very active in Bellhaven to think about good ways of communicating and getting outreach going. Any other comments around this? We'll follow up with you for sure on that shortly, but does any commissioners have any other feedback on the project generally or on this question of outreach?
I guess I don't want to keep tossing out easy ideas because you've probably really already thought of those. I mean, it does encompass like the Ravenswood School District seems to overlay with this Ride Plus zone nicely. So I think, but again, I'm only tossing you the easy answers and I will need some time to think on those other ones.
All right. Well, I hope that you've heard our, I think our very, I guess, unanimous or reaction to this, which is very positive, and appreciate all the work you're doing to reach out to this underserved groups that are, as you said, hard to service with the fixed routes. Wish you all the best of luck in this launch. It's not a pilot, as you said, so you're really going out there boldly, which is very much appreciated. And also, I love the 6 weeks of free ridership is a really good way to get people engaged and trying it. So we will follow up with you through Kevin around a few other folks who want to connect you with who can help you with thinking about outreach.
Great. Thank you so much for having us, and we're excited to start the service on June 18th.
Absolutely. Good luck with that. And we're excited to hear how it goes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to E3, which is to recommend to the City Council the draft Menlo Park Community Campus Parking Management Plan. I would like to ask Kevin Chen to introduce the item.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. If you can give me 1 second, I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen here. Sorry, too many buttons here. Here we go. Great, awesome. So thanks again. Kevin Chan, Senior Transportation Engineer with the City of Menlo Park here. Excited to be here tonight, obviously, to present this item in front of you. This has come to the commission before back in December of last year. So a lot of this is really old information. So I try to get through them as quickly as possible, but also a few updates since the last meeting that I would like to share. Ultimately, we are looking for a recommendation from the commission to the city council to adopt the plan. So we'll be seeking a motion in a second for at the end of the item. Okay, so briefly going over some of the backgrounds. Obviously, this is sort of a site plan for the future MPCC. You have seen this before, and some of the circulation elements associated with that. But tonight, really, the item is about the parking management plan, which again, we'll go into a bit more detail a little bit later on. Just a quick timeline for the project itself. So back in late 2019, Meta submitted a proposal to the city to fund and build the new campus. So, and then of course, in early 2021, the city council approved the proposal to move forward with it. And currently it's under construction. And I believe some of you might have actually attended one of the tours before. So, and I think great feedback was received through those tours. Generally speaking, construction started around November 2021, and we are anticipating opening sometime in 2024. Here's a quick summary of the discussions and the action that took place back in December 14, 2022, last year, of the Complete Streets Commission meeting. Staff at that time came through the commission with some very high-level recommendations for the parking management plan that had to do with how we want to prioritize those parkings. There was some conversation about additional signage to really help wayfinding for the cyclists and also loading zones. So here are those 4 sort of high-level talking points that we as staff received direction from the commission that night. And of course, after that meeting, staff went back to the drawing board and we communicated with our community service department, which ultimately will be the department that is handling a majority of the programs in the new MPCC campus. We also share some of the recommendations that came through that commission meeting with our colleagues to try to get a sense. And of course, since then, there was some additional information, for example, programming, et cetera, that have that our community service department received. So their knowledge has gained, in terms of the program, has gained some additional knowledge since then. So the table in front of you here essentially outlines those key areas that were discussed at the meeting. The middle column right there is some of the directions that we received that night from the commission, and then the column to the far right there would be sort of the final recommendation. Generally speaking, the Beechwood and time restriction parking priorities, we went back and essentially develop a little bit more detail to those items. For example, for the Beechwood, we maintain the same amount of spaces that were recommended that night. And now we're coming back to you with a recommendation to essentially scale that between 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., which is coincide with the operation of the school. For time restriction, I believe we came to you with a 2-hour recommendation, and I think the feedback we got was reduce that. So we're now recommending a 15-minute, and of course, with a time limit from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., which we also received confirmation from our colleagues that this would be a good amount of turnover for those spaces. A couple other priorities that were discussed was parking for seniors and also loading zone. Since then, we did receive some additional information about a secondary loading zone. And the next slide, I'll have an exhibit that kind of show that location. Of course, is in the staff report as well. So for those 2 particular items, our colleague and the staff as a whole ultimately decided that we want to table those for now, let the program mature, let those patrons come in and out, develop a more consistent pattern, which would then allow us to better serve those patrons as well. So we're taking a more of a hold and see approach for those two particular items. And then finally, the PG&E substation driveway, I'm going to go ahead and navigate to the slide with the table so you can more easily see with referencing the driveway that is just slightly to the left of the word C 3.5. So it's down there by the substation. The comment that night was to look at site distance availability, given the fact that some of the buses are going to be parking along sort of the right side of the driveway. So we went back, conducted a site distance evaluation, and we ultimately determined that we would be able to shift the center line further away. Initially, the recommendation was to have the center line right down the center of the street, and we are recommending to shift that center line further away, so that way you kind of create more visibility for those folks as well. We're also going to take a bit of a observation for this location as well. We're anticipating that this location will most likely be used probably by some staff member or maybe pool users. And generally, we're not anticipating a lot of left turn vehicle out of that driveway. However, we do want to, once the MPCC is open and again, pattern has been has been normalized, we'll continue to observe that intersection or that particular driveway and see if there's any additional improvements that can be made. Following some of those recommendations, as you might recall, there was a really robust conversation about overnight parking, and generally the direction at that night was, this really needs to be a more holistic approach, given that we have quite a few city-owned facilities, and there are more than one location that are seeing sort of the pattern of overnight parking. Coupling that with the fact that any changes that we would propose would likely be a municipal code change, which requires a few more steps than just a standard a change that you might normally see for some other topics. As a result of that, the recommendation that night was to really come back as a future item. So we are continuing that recommendation to the City Council. However, we also identify a few topics through our conversation with our colleagues, sort of honing into if we do want to proceed with some sort of a municipal change, those are the topics that we want to make sure that this language would address. And those are the 4 topics in front of you. Daytime operation impact. I think we had a healthy discussion about that, making sure that if we do indeed have an overnight parking, either a program or some sort of mechanism, that it doesn't impact the early morning patrons, for example, the MPCC or Neelam Park, et cetera. RV uses would be one that we want to be cognizant about. For example, it is something that we are seeing in our neighboring agencies as well. So we want to make sure that whatever policies that we come up with, that particular topic gets discussed and addressed. Hours of operation and enforcement, again, has to do with what type of impact such a program would do to sort of the neighborhood and also the facility itself. Obviously will house patrons in the morning. Of course, enforcement, anytime we have some sort of a restriction, enforcement is the top of discussion topics as well. So those are things that we definitely would need to kind of discuss in detail if we do indeed move towards that direction. And of course, with everything else, there's going to be an eligibility, making sure that we serve the people that need to be served, and also a fee structure, whether or not there will be a fee associated with that service as well. So those are sort of the high level topics that, in the near future, we'll have those conversations, and ultimately you'll come back to the commission at a future date. But I do want to just bring that to your attention, that those are the things that we're thinking about right now. So in conclusion, tonight, again, we're seeking a recommendation from the commission to the City Council to adopt the management plan. This is sort of an illustration of the discussions that we have had here. The blue and I guess the teal represents sort of the parking restrictions that we discussed a little bit earlier. The purple is that secondary loading area that I mentioned to you. So again, the purpose is to kind of move those activities away from the main entrance, given some more flexibility for that front loading zone area. So this is ultimately sort of the recommendation that we're proposing to the city council for tonight. So looking for your feedback. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. It was an excellent presentation. Do we have any clarifying questions from the commission before I take public comment? Commissioner King.
Kevin, I am looking at the Beechwood lot and thinking about our conversation with the principal of school who came out. And my question to you is, did you consult with them on the hours that you outlined, the 8 to 3? Because my thought is perhaps that might be too short a window for teachers arriving at school and kids leaving school.
Right. So we did consult those hours. I think generally they were comfortable with those hours. I think generally people some of the teachers do come in a little bit earlier, but they didn't seem to have an issue with the hour of operation that we're proposing here.
Good.
Mhm.
And then I know that the general plan for MPCC in its entirety is to open in March, but the school is going to be using those facilities come August. And so when would the new markings and signage or whatever it may be occur? And what is the format? Is it going to be painted? Is there going to be signage? What have you outlined?
Right.
School
So
specifically.
that's a definitely great question. I think in terms of the striping, you're probably looking at something that's very similar to what's in front of you. This is essentially kind of the striping plan, if you will, for that area. In terms of signage, we are still kind of in that discussion. I think ideally we would like to minimize the number of signs necessary. And in this case, we do have the luxury of an entrance. So we can have a sort of a more visible sign right at the entrance.
Good
Right, so
point.
that people that come in maybe by accident, they'll be able to kind of exit. Again, this is meant to be a prioritization, so not necessarily enforceable, but we are kind of encouraging people to not park there and give those flexibilities to the school, the students, and the teachers, et cetera. We are kind of in constant communication. I recognize the fact that the lot itself is kind of ready to go and it will be open or has been open. So we're kind of in constant communication with them to see how the operation is going, and then if there's any sort of byproducts that are kind of reoccurring, we'll try to address them appropriately as well. So.
Commissioner Cibrian.
Along the same question line, maybe it's just assumed in there, but in the hours of 8 to 3,
Mhm.
can it be added that it's just for only school days? Like I know that Beechwood is a year-round school, but they do have vacations and weekends off, just so it's clear that it's just for school days.
Yeah.
I am kind of curious if there are any other places in the city where we reserve space for non-public entities. Or if this is the only place where we're saving space in our public lot for a school, which by the way, needs a space. So I'm just asking.
Right, yeah. So, want to make that distinction that we're not necessarily reserving, but more just kind of encouraging.
Okay.
Prioritization, I think, is the word that we use. And Neelam Park would be another one that I'm aware of that is kind of serving private entities.
Okay.
Sorry, Kevin, could you elaborate on what priority means in this context? Is it just a sign that says, please don't park here, or is there any form of actual restriction on the general public to park there?
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Silverstein. Yes. So that is in the kind of the verbiage. We will come up with the exact verbiage, but yes, will be something along the line of, this space is doing those hours, doing school days are really encouraged to be reserved for, or saved for Beechwood activities. But yeah, that would be
The
something.
school finds that all the spots are filled up, and there's no recourse. There's no formal recourse, right?
That is correct. It's not enforceable. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Silverstein. I do agree with Commissioner Seabrian that I think it is important to, on the sign, as you just said, Kevin, to designate that it's just for school days. I'm sure on some super busy, summer day when everyone's going to the pool or whatnot, it's just good to have the certainty to know that, there's no reason not to park there. Did anyone have any other clarifying questions? I have a couple, but I'm just going
I
to
have
polling
one.
everyone.
I have
Commissioner
one
Seabrian?
more. I think just one more. Actually, first I want to say thank you so much for folding in all of our feedback from the
Yes.
last meeting, because it seems like all the things we talked about are all on here. And I was just at a meeting earlier today where we were talking about that feeling of being listened to. And I'm like, this is what it looks like. Thanks. I love that we're moving up the stop sign at Del Norte and Terminal, because I have actually had a resident stop me to talk to me about it, which hardly ever happens. And then the last question I have is, if we're moving that loading zone around the corner, are we going to have some helpful wayfinding signs? Because as I look at it, it's hard for me to imagine most people making the effort to go around the corner to that loading zone instead of right in front of the building. So I'm just curious if we're having some way to make that seem like a really fun and awesome place to drop people off at.
Right, we will still continue to have that front loading zone. I think for those activity that you're thinking of, I think the back loading zone is more for regular truck usage that we are aware of, like food delivery services, UPS, et cetera. Those that are more frequent, more aware of our layout, and we'll do our best to kind of advertise that and make sure that they use that space instead. So
I think I didn't understand what that
I'm
was
so
for.
relieved. I
so
didn't understand anything.
Now I'm clarified.
No,
Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking the question.
Yes, my follow-up question on that is the same. So there will be an opportunity to just drop your kid off right in front, right? Sort of stop for a moment and just drop your kid off right in the front of the center. But that purple loading zone in the back will be designated for, you said, like trucks and deliveries, et cetera. I know that you're trying to eliminate signage, but will there be any signs around that? Or is that just about informing trucks and delivery folks? How
Yeah,
does that work?
we'll look into
Signs?
having at least one loading sign or some type of striping to make it clear that this
Great.
is sort of the loading area with the potential to, expand in the future if necessary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Altman.
Go ahead.
Was the bike wayfinding found to be adequate? The bike wayfinding? Because that was one of the findings in December.
Yeah.
Was the bike wayfinding.
Right.
It
So
was found to be adequate for,
I'm sorry. So what was the question?
so bike wayfinding
Yeah.
was one of the topics.
Mhm.
And what was there a follow-up for the bike wayfinding?
I think it's more of just a note that we made to ourselves to make sure that, ultimately with the wayfinding signs, and I think this goes beyond just the MPCC campus, because along the city, we do have bike wayfinding signs. For
Mhm.
example, we have
Yep.
wayfinding signs that lead you from downtown all the way to Betwell Bayfront Park. So I think this is more of a collectively wanting to make sure that people outside, we have those signs available to point them to. And generally those signs would have like a general distance and number of minutes that a rider would kind of need to estimate to get to that destination. So, but along the site itself, I think the entrance is going to be fairly clear where the entrances are, and we do expect people to be able to find that relatively quickly. But to your point, if we do see a need to kind of make that more clear, we'll definitely do so as well.
I know it's slightly off topic, but
Yeah.
that's a real stressful bike ride.
Yeah.
Down Terminal.
On
It's-
Terminal?
I mean, it's a high stress bike ride.
Yeah. I will keep that more so because of the cars speeding.
Because of the cars and the car speeding.
Got it.
And that, that's without that place being in use.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that comment.
Um,
Clarify-
Speaking of biking, I
Go
had
ahead.
a follow-up question.
Yes.
Kevin, I was looking in the documentation. I couldn't find exactly how many car parking spots were available in total, and conversely, how many bike parking spots there are expected to be with bike racks. I know there's like one small section in the front that might have a bike rack, but it seems like it's going to be about 1% of the total space being used for car parking. Do you have those numbers available?
Yeah, I do. I think those numbers are more available. I apologize. There is a hyperlink to a previous staff report. I think that one went into much more detail about the parking supply and demand. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm trying to pull that number out for you. I think it's close to, I think for car parking spaces, it's close to, sorry, actually, I don't know why I did try to do that. I probably should have just pulled up the information. Where am I?
And if you don't have it available right now, then
Yeah, I
we can
apologize. I can
back to
follow
this.
offline, but yeah, it is part of the, if you have the agenda in front of you or the staff report in front of you, one of the hyperlinks in the attachment is a hyperlink to the previous commission staff report, and that one should have the parking supplies.
Okay, I'm there and I still don't see it, but I
Okay.
will read through it again.
Okay.
And then I guess I wasn't around for previous discussions around this, but is it generally assumed that there is enough bike parking and people are satisfied with that? Because when I just looked at the like overall plans, it looked relatively minimal to me. And that's one of the things that I think we should generally improve around Menlo Park.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point, and it is something that we're continuing to have that conversation on. I think luckily with the fact that it is a city facility, we can always add more bicycle parking if necessary. In terms of long term or mid or short term, I think that's obviously a different discussion. But bike racks will be able to kind of add them in as necessary as well.
Can I have a follow-up on that point? Because I know we were talking about Middle Avenue. We had questions about, if parking on Elon Park may be reduced by number of spaces, would we add more bike racks, et cetera? And I know that Jackie and I kind of did a little handshake and said, let's always ask about bike racks and whether we're adding them. So Kevin, can you circle back with us if we don't have an answer now around the number of bikes that are accommodated in the current plan for the community center? And I mean, because I think this is possible, this might come up at the city council meeting, so I think we should anticipate it, like the number right now accommodated, and can the commission provide feedback around whether we would like to pass on to the council if we think it's warranted to increase the number now before we kind of wait and look and see?
Yeah, no, that's a great feedback. Unfortunately, I do not know the exact
Yeah.
bicycle count at this moment in time, but I think that's a great feedback. So what we could do is we can go back, sort of. I mean, obviously the team will kind of reevaluate that, get a more concrete number.
Sure.
And then I think if that's one of the feedback tonight is maybe explore that, we'll definitely take that into consideration as we
Yes.
move forward to the next stage.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Can I ask a quick, just to go with it? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hugh.
Sorry, through the chair. I just wanted a little note on bike parking generally, and especially as it relates to development. So our zoning code and then other various places of our municipal code does sort of set bicycle parking requirements in addition to vehicle parking requirements, and those are generally drawn from the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Planners. They have a document that's a sort of a bike parking guide. It's a thick guide about everything you could ever want to know about bicycle parking. It's great. So generally, so I don't know the specifics of MPCC, and we can definitely look into that, but just as a sort of general point, like as we're reviewing developments, they do have to produce a certain amount of bike parking, and it is sort of, I would say, generally in line with national best practice in that. That doesn't necessarily mean that national best practice is what we want to achieve, and that's certainly something we'd love to take further guidance on at a future time or now. But just to let you know that they do exist.
Okay, so if we wanted to recommend to go beyond what the bike planning organization guidelines are, we could even note that to the city council, like this may be sort of current standard, but we want to try to exceed it because we anticipate more biking, or we want to encourage more biking.
Hey, Kevin, I wanted to mention that on that hyperlink that I was in the notes, the total parking supply is 164 spaces. So therefore, if there's some ratio relative bicycles to parking spots, there's your number.
Great, thank you. Yeah. So 164, I believe that's the number for
The entire
the
site.
entire site. So that includes the parking lot in the back for Kelly Park as well, just
Yes,
for
right.
Commissioner Silverstein's point of reference.
Thank you.
That is a super good segue to my other question though, which is, are there bike racks? There are bike racks at Kelly Park also? Yes.
Yes. I believe
Okay.
so.
Because that will help. I mean, it's sort of one complex. So.
Yeah, and just to the chair's point, we'll definitely take that feedback as well from tonight.
I have two things, if no one else has something. Just following up on Commissioner Ahmed's question about wayfinding, my recollection at the December meeting is that we wanted to encourage biking to the center. And so at specific points around that neighborhood, we wanted to flag to people, if you just go down here, you can just bike right to the community center. We wanted to flag what types of natural routes there would be. So does that, from what you know of that, of the signage in that neighborhood right now, and wayfinding signs throughout the city that have, sort of shout out bike routes or something, it sounds like there isn't like a standing recommendation to maybe include more signs. Or maybe that's something we can even think about, in a later stage, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's one of the feedbacks that we got from that meeting, and we'll continue to kind of use that as an evaluation criteria.
Okay.
We do currently have bike wayfinding signs, like I mentioned, kind of around downtown area that leads you
Yeah.
all the way to Ringwood. We do have some wayfinding signs along Hamilton, and as you get off that Ringwood Bridge, I think there's one there as well, and along Choco. So basically, kind of along the pathway from downtown to Bayfront Park. So kind of Ringwood, Hamilton, Choco. We have wayfinding signs along the way, and those wayfinding signs, if you haven't seen them yet, they essentially allow us to swap out plates. I think there's like 3 or 4 destinations per sign. And so that kind of, and those
see.
are kind of key destinations, if you will. So we will have the opportunity to kind of reassess that. And at that time, if we do felt like, and then I think one of the things that we want to consider as well is also with the new program where people are coming from at that time, and we'll be more than happy to add more wayfinding signs at that time if necessary. Yeah. But that is something we are considering as we kind of move forward.
Great. And that's a nice way of doing it too, is to potentially swap out on the existing signs as well. The only other thing I wanted to chat about quickly was the overnight parking, which boy, that took up a lot of time in December. That was a big, big hot issue. If we could quickly flip up that slide for a moment. I had one clarifying question on that. Don't know. I'll wait as that happens. Thank you so much. Yes. So my clarifying question was, so pardon if I'm just wasn't listening properly, but is this mean that currently or going into the opening of the MPCC, there will be no overnight parking allowed, and then the city will look at establishing a policy around overnight parking around city-owned facilities, considering these different considerations that are under topic? So going into the opening of it, no overnight parking, or going into the opening of it, no policy at all? Okay, right. And then we're going to be looking at a policy in the future.
That is correct. So
Okay.
the current status is that there's no policy at all.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. That was my clarifying question. All right, then. If no other clarifying questions, let me ask Patrick, who's been patiently waiting, to please call for public comments on this item.
Thank you, Chair Cole. If you are currently tuning in online and you have a public comment, please just use the raised hand feature or press *9. Otherwise, if you are participating in person, please wait for the chair or the liaison to call your name, and you can step up to the podium to make your comment. That being said, I do not think we have any remote public comments. Kevin, do we have any that are in person?
Great. Through the chair, we do have a public comment card here. It's Dina Levin.
Excellent.
Hi, hello again.
Hello.
So it occurred to me, having had the previous presentation from Samtrans about the on-demand service. So previously with the fixed route service, you could get to the community center, but where you could get to it on transit was fairly limited because and so I'm curious about with this new service, how much more useful this might be to get to the community service, to get to the center, because if it is sufficiently convenient, that is a parking management strategy if fewer people actually have to drive a car to get there. And so that does seem, if there's an opening in 2024 and Samtrans thing is still running, to be really promoting it from the get-go.
Yeah.
And I can imagine like especially for for anybody, but also for seniors, you could have a iPad kiosk to order your thing and then to show hey, it's on its way, so that you're wrapping up your class and you can see the shuttle on its way to you. So that seems potentially helpful. And which brings me to my fantasy about that, which may be a better world than the world that we live in. But there had been some discussion about, there was a development on the other side of the tracks that was interested in doing an undercrossing that would connect people by the development and the school over to the community center. But it would have required taking away too much car parking. And so I am wondering if there's any way, if it was possible to say, hey, we actually routinely have 20 people, using public transit. Does that free up enough car parking spaces? And then has the train left the station on being able to eventually do an undercrossing, or would that create enough space to do an undercrossing? So that is my visionary future world, which may no longer be possible. And then the very last thing that is back to the previous topic, somebody had mentioned Juneteenth. I hope because Juneteenth, if we're celebrating it on the 19th or after, then the Samtrans service starts on the 18th. So that seems like a really great thing to promote along with Juneteenth, download the app here, try out getting home as a way to have people to test out that service. Thanks.
Thank you very much. There were so many ideas. I just need a moment to write down the last one. Thank you, Ms. Levin. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Well, if that is all the public feedback we have, let me turn to the commission. I know we had a lot of clarifying questions. Thank you, Kevin, for your patience. Do we have any more feedback on Kevin's presentation? The only piece of feedback I had that I stifled, because we were in the clarifying questions section, was, Kevin, I really thought that the topics that you put down underneath that the staff would consider in formulating an overnight parking policy across the city were really thoughtful. And I thought they really hit on the major things that would be considerations around potential fee structure or RVs, daytime operations. It's a tricky topic. We remember that from that first discussion, but I really thought that staff and you did a really good job of isolating the things that will, I think, once considered, will end up formulating a very solid policy on this. And I'm glad that the discussion the commission has encouraged that to happen. So that is the feedback I have. Otherwise, I think the plan's good. Anyone else? Commissioners on feedback on the plan? No feedback. Okay, well then let's call for a motion, because Kevin asked us to do a motion on this before it goes to City Council. Does anyone want to try a motion? No? I'll give that one. Go ahead.
Is it do we make a motion to approve it with all those other things that we said to, because we talked about a lot of things in here. So I would say that we approve it along with whatever other extra notes that we've added in terms of like making sure that the parking is like suggestive restrictions only on school days.
Would you mind, sorry for interrupting, for Kevin and Hugh, I have a question, given what Commissioner Seabrian is saying. We did have some good, I think, suggestions we passed on, for example, Commissioner Seabrian's suggestion to make sure that it says on school days with regard to the parking, encouraging people not to park on the school spaces in certain hours, certain days. Is it more beneficial if the motion just says, we recommend that the city council adopt the Menlo Park Community Parking Management Plan, and then just ask you, separate apart from that motion, to make sure that the staff report provides in detail our suggestions? Or should that be part of the motion? What would you suggest? I'd like some guidance.
Yeah, I think it's certainly fair to have kind of what you outlined, which is baseline recommended the MPCC parking management plan, and then adding those additional elements as part of the motion, and just kind of summarize, adding the school day verbiage onto the signs, sort of the bicycle rack, kind of get an understanding of the quantity, and then also that opportunity for additional bike racks in the future if necessary, and then continue to monitor the wayfinding signs.
Yes.
As we continue to kind of develop that, as the campus opens and the program kind of mature and standardize, et cetera, and then we can kind of continue to do that work. Yeah.
Let me quickly glance through my notes and see if there's anything else.
That's a really complicated motion.
Well, I think you can state the statement of that because I do think that we obviously all agree on the general points that it's good to go. So just a general statement that we are recommending. So I'll make the motion. Do you want to make the motion? The motion being that to recommend to the city council that the Menlo Park Community Campus Parking Management Plan be approved. And then to note that the commission's asked the staff to ensure that the signage around parking guidelines indicates that these guidelines are for school days only. That I'm looking for my things, hold on. Oh, yes, that there be an evaluation of the number of bike parking spaces provided and evaluating whether it makes sense to add more. And finally, to evaluate the degree of wayfinding signage directing people, indicating that there are bike routes to the community center, evaluating the existing wayfinding signage, and assessing whether more could be done to encourage biking and make people aware of routes to the center.
I second that.
Thank God. I'm not saying it again. Okay.
Great, thank you. So we do have a motion and a second on the table, just with an eye towards Commissioner Silverstein. Just make sure that there's no additional feedback that he would like to add to the motion. Okay, I'm seeing no, so great. So in that case, with that motion on the table, for those that would like to vote yes to the item, if you can go ahead and raise your hand real quick. I'm seeing unanimous hands. Great, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We will, for the good work. We're going to move on to item E4, which is the selection of the chair and the vice chair. Kevin, will you please introduce the item?
Great, thank you very much. So we do have a new commissioner as well as maybe, well, actually, no, I think the rest of the commissioners have been through the process before. So, you know, May is typically the month for our commission to select a chair and vice chair, new vice chair. Typically, that's a year-round thing that we do here, the opportunity for commissioners that maybe want to take that just one tiny step further, becoming a chair and vice chair. So certainly welcome that and Again, if that's not something that you're considering this year, but would like to explore, happy to have those conversations with you about some of the kind of behind the scenes, if you will. But generally speaking, kind of the expectations that we have for the chair and vice chair, we do have a additional monthly agenda setting meeting. And with technology nowadays, you do not have to come in to the city hall, although if you would like to, we can certainly set that up, but we have the option of doing in person or Zoom. Typically that's a 45-minute to an hour conversation. Generally, we'll run down the agenda for the upcoming month, and then also any conversations that we can have at that time, that those are welcome as well. So certainly somewhere between 45 to an hour or so. So that will be additional kind of, hours that you have to dedicate to the commission in addition to attending the meeting and reading the staff report and et cetera, et cetera. But other than that, and typically, again, once a month, and of course, with the chair and vice chair, typically we'll try to share additional information through the chair before we kind of share those with the commission as well, just to, so those are some additional perks, if you will, if you are interested. So with that, just to kind of go over the procedure real quick, we are looking for nominations and definitely welcome self-nomination as well. We'll go with chair first and then the vice chair. Once we have the nominations, I'll go ahead and obviously identify the candidate. And then at that point, I will be asking each of you to vote. You do have one vote for each position. So that means you are essentially selecting your preferred candidate out of all the candidates. And at the end of that round, whoever gets the most votes obviously will be selected. And if we do have a tie, then we'll go with those top candidates and kind of repeat the process, so to speak. So hopefully that's clear enough. So the chair has a hand.
Excuse me, I just wanted to add to what you said about the agenda setting meetings, which I find have been very useful. One of the, I think, positives about those meetings, or one of the things that happens at those meetings, is the ability to ask you, what about Coleman and Ringwood? And what about that project we discussed a few meetings ago, and get an update from you. And if it, rises to the level of circling back with the commission on it, we can talk about an appropriate time to do that. So we're sort of constantly tracking really what priority issues are have been on the plate for the commission. And I think in that way, keeping us all focused and following up. All right. Well, thank you, Kevin. Should I call for public, Patrick?
Yeah, through the chair, if you don't mind, do a public comment call. We do have someone, I think, on the
Okay,
Zoom.
Patrick, would you call for public comments on this item?
Thank you, Chair Cole. For anyone, again, attending remotely, please just use the raised hand feature or *9 for your virtual hand, or if you're in public, you can wait for the chair to call your name and step up to the podium. That being said, we do have a hand for public comment from Adina Levin, calling in remotely. So Adina, you are now the public speaker.
Hey, sorry about that. That was a pocket dial. I am not intending to give a public comment.
Thank you
Well,
anyway.
thanks. All right. Bye.
I was hoping our former chair would share some fond memories of being chair.
There you go. Working with Kevin, it's a
I
dream.
do have a
I'm
comment.
sure she enjoyed her
I have a
tenure.
Good job. Thank you.
Oh, thank
It
you.
was-
Thank you
it
so
was
much.
very much appreciated.
That's very, very kind of you. Thank you, Commissioner Allman. Touched. All right. Well, if in the absence of public comment or other pocket dials, we will move to Kevin to proceed.
Great. So in this, at this moment in time, we'll start with the chair position. And at this point, I will accept any nominations.
Oh.
I had a question. So Jackie, as vice chair, doesn't just become the chair?
She doesn't just become the chair,
No.
Okay.
has to be
That-
nominated
I
and
kind
then
of thought so.
But we can make that happen.
Yeah. So does anyone have a nomination?
Does,
Nominate Jackie.
does Sally's position as chair preclude her from becoming vice chair?
Certainly not. If there's a desire for, we would like to, at least kind of speaking, let everyone that would like to
Certainly.
have an opportunity to do so. And
Yep.
at that time, if there's really no new candidates, the current chair is more than welcome to be the vice chair. Yes.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
I think Commissioner Altman had a nomination for chair.
Yeah.
Check. And do we second nominate? No, we don't second them. We just wait for the vote.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, then we have one nomination for chair from
Okay.
Commissioner Altman. Any other nominations for chair?
Are we only doing chair or can we do vice chair too?
We'll do vice chair later.
Later.
We'll do chair first. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, great. So I believe we do have one nomination for our vice chair. If you would like to cast a yes vote, if you can go ahead and raise your hand.
For chair.
For chair, sorry. Yes. Okay, believe I'm seeing all hands. Great. Well, then congratulations. Newly amended chair. Okay, great. So now moving to our next position, vice chair is now up for nomination. So again, many of the same perks that the chair gets, except you don't have to read the chair notes.
Yes, I don't have to read the chair
You can
notes.
observe it for a year, and then next year, if you're interested.
And the
then
vice
that's it.
chair would be the chair at a meeting if the chair were absent.
Exactly.
Another-
Thank you for that clarification. Yes, if the chair cannot make the meeting, the vice chair is obligated to run the meeting.
Yes. And self-nominations are welcome.
Mhm.
I would nominate Sally for vice chair.
Okay, so we have a nomination from Commissioner King for current chair Okay, great. Anyone else interested? No? All right. Going once. Okay, great. So in that case, we do have a nomination for vice chair, nominated by Commissioner King, nominating Chair Ko. So that would like to vote yes, if you can please raise your hand. I am seeing all hands. Great, thank you very much.
Is that new? Is that, I did not see that coming. Well,
Sally,
that's,
I noticed you didn't vote for yourself. Was that
I
on purpose?
abstained because am I allowed to vote for myself?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'll
yeah,
do
yeah.
go in there.
Yeah,
Make it unanimous.
yeah.
Thank you,
Because if you
Commissioner
don't want to vote
Silverstein.
for yourself, then I'm like, well, then do you not want
Sure.
the positions? Yes.
Did I vote? I'm trying to remember other times in my life if I voted for myself. Okay, yes, thank you. Well, I'm truly honored to have been nominated to the executive team one more time. Thank you, Commissioner King. It's very kind. Happy to serve. Want to say that I've really enjoyed being in partnership with Jackie. Really, I just really appreciated that. Me too. So on we go to more great things, even better. Okay, so Patrick, I know you were hanging in there for that last public comment and informational item, so I will proceed. And also, I really look forward to keep working with you, Kevin. You are an excellent public servant.
Likewise.
So under informational items, city staff provides an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. And the one informational item tonight is an update on major project status. Kevin, do you have an update for us?
Great, thank you. Yeah, so since we had a fairly extensive conversation about the CIP program early on, I just have two projects that I wanted to kind of bring your attention, actually three. One is that we, for the Coleman and Ringwood study, so this is the county effort, if you recall.
Yep.
I believe there was a
Yes.
meeting that
Coming
took
forward.
place, community meeting, where the resident were able to kind of use wooden blocks to kind of build out what they would consider to be the ideal cross sections. So through Hugh, apparently we got our hands on those blocks. So the next time we have something that might require
Cool.
that exercise, we'll be more than happy to use that. So yay for us getting our hands on those. Just in terms of the next steps, the community meeting, immediately following that meeting, I believe there will be a survey, an online survey that will be published in the very near future. And that survey is going to be surrounding on the topic of design options. So I think that will be a survey where the community will really be able to kind of voice their opinion about what they would like to see in terms of the actual design elements itself. Of course, with that, then once the team has a chance to compile the data and analyze it, it will then come to our Complete Streets Commission with a summary and some additional feedback. So do look forward to that. Yeah, for our local road safety plan, there also have been a stakeholder meeting. That particular meeting really has to do more about going over some of the existing conditions within the city, looking at collision data, et cetera. So it's more of a meeting that really discussed the existing conditions. I know at least one commissioner attended, so more than happy to, whichever commissioner attended those meetings, if they want to speak to it, more than welcome to do so as well. The last item I wanted to bring to your attention would be the Middle Avenue Complete Streets project. We do have a consultant on, we're kind of going through the agreement process, and we're really close to getting that project started. So that's really exciting news as well. So with that, I will conclude my status update.
Very exciting, except Middle Avenue, and you said you have a consultant on board. Is that a design?
That is correct. So
Oh,
if you
great.
recall, we have a few elements associated with that project. We had the pilot bike lane, which we're
Yeah.
currently doing the design for. We have those traffic calming measures that along the corridor.
Yeah.
We have the evaluation of Middle and El Camino. So looking at the signals,
Absolutely.
try to make some improvements along the area. We did get some specific feedback from the commission on what we'd like to examine. So those are all elements that will now be proceeding once we have all the logistic items.
That's really
line
good
up.
to hear. Thank you. I have to say, every time I stop at that San Mateo stop sign, I just think, I can't wait to see all the other stuff come to life, all the traffic calming. All right. Thank you, Kevin. Patrick, will you please call for public comments on this item?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Chair Cole. If you have a public comment and you are attending virtually, please just raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you're calling in. It looks like we do have a comment from Adina Levin. You are now the public speaker.
Hi, that was actually on purpose. This is Dina actually reporting on a recently completed project. So in leaving the building, I utilized with the bicycle the intersection of Laurel and Ravenswood, which has new signs and bicycle facilities, and it worked like a charm. And so I know that this was something that has come to the Complete Streets Commission before and got discussed and debated. And the previous sign bike turn feature never worked before, as far as I can tell, and the whole thing seemed to be working quite well. So wanted to commend everyone all concerned. Thank you.
I'm starting to envision a meeting where Adina's bicycling around Menlo Park and calls us in periodically for feedback at different intersections. That was really welcome feedback. Thank you. Thank you, Adina, for your engagement and you're funneling these excellent observations to us. All right, Patrick, if that's the only public comment, we'll move on to committee subcommittee reports. If there are none, I will just add that one of the things I'd like to work on in the coming year is the subcommittees, and maybe having us kind of each subcommittee take on kind of one initiative and focus on that so that we have a bit more direction, but we'll talk about that in the future. Yes.
Did we get to the part where commissioners say the report thing? Did I miss that?
Oh, I think you can. Good point. I think that can be under both reports and announcements, or also, you're right. Oh, informational items is city staff. So under reports and announcements, it's city staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest.
I somehow thought it was down here.
That's okay. Is there, can we, can Commissioner Sebrin, just communicate a matter of interest?
Absolutely, go for
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I just wanted to share that I went to that, the Coleman Ringwood Community Workshop. And Kevin is right. The blocks were really fun. I just am endlessly amused that we had like a whole bunch of grown-ups standing around with blocks, and they were awesome. They had different, like they had the lane widths and everything was to scale. They had these really long like road stretches with the right of ways drawn. And so you could like position the blocks how you want them, just fit them in the right of way. Like, do you want turn lanes? Do you want landscape buffers? Do you want buffered bike lanes? Whatever you wanted. And it was a great way to kind of engage community members. I just found they wanted people to talk to each other. And so I found like at first it seemed quiet, but then you'd start moving blocks around and somebody was like, oh, well, what if we tried it this way? And then, and then you can bring up, well, like, what are you going to do about this problem and this problem? So I found it to be totally engaging, and I liked it so much that I asked you if it could travel to schools, because I would imagine that with like the Upper Laurel doing the project-based learning, like this is exactly the kind of project that they would be able to like, here's how it works, here's how traffic engineering works, and maybe 10-year-olds actually have solutions we haven't thought of. So first, I just want to say that was a super enjoyable workshop. And when
Great.
I went to work the next day, talking about that really fun traffic workshop I went to, like, and I'm holding underneath here the lovely proclamation from the city, because at our city meeting last night, it's Bike Month. So they gave us this nice proclamation. And I just wanted to tell everybody that Sally and I were here to receive it. And so we have a nice proclamation for Bike Month. So
Yes, the city recognized
yeah,
that.
it's Bike Month. And I think it's Bike to Wherever days are coming
Yeah.
up. And if we have not signed up to Bike to Wherever, we're in some sort of a contest,
Right.
and Gilroy's ahead of us,
Yes.
but we're in second place for the most amount of residents pledged to Bike to Wherever on those Bike to Wherever days. So if you haven't had a chance to yet, sign up to Bike Somewhere on the 18th, and maybe I don't know what we win for being in first place, but we'll be very excited about it.
I was going to ask Kevin, I assume you were dialed in last night. I'm not sure at this particular moment of the city council meeting, but when Mayor Wallison mentioned that there was this contest among municipalities in the Bay Area to sign up for this Bike to Wherever Day, and as she said, like, we're in second place now. Do you know how we can access that site, or do you know what the URL might be, or could you circulate it on for commission members? If you have it, if you don't, I can probably just track it down.
Yeah, personally, I think I saw you. So
Oh.
Hi. So it's run by the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition.
Okay.
And basically there's a thing on their website, which is something like svbc.org, I think, but search for Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, you'll find it. And essentially you can go in and pledge to bike. And Bike to Work Day has traditionally been the third Thursday or second Thursday. So it's the 18th this year. And over the last few years, it's been Bike to Wherever Day because people haven't been going to work. But so it's a little bit Bike to Work, Bike to Wherever Day. It's on a Thursday, and then also on the 19th and 20th, so the following Friday and Saturday as well. But yeah, you go to the website, pledge to ride. Basically, they're just calculating, I think, the number of people who are pledging relative to the population or something like that, and ranking all the cities. And we were first for a while, and now we're second. So yeah, I think the mayor would be excited to see us back in first again.
Okay. And I think you get a tote bag. It's definitely a tote bag. All right. So Silicon Valley Bicycle.
Yes, you get a tote bag. If you come to an Energizer station, you don't have to pre-register to get a tote bag. But if you come to an Energizer station, we have 5 that we run in the city. So at Caltrain and at each of the pedestrian bicycle bridge crossings in the city. So some that connect to the other, to Palo Alto, and then the Ringwood one. There'll be folks there, and you can get a bag there, but you don't have to pre-register. But pre-registering is more for the
So
competition.
they can judge demand or whatever. Yeah. Thank you, Hugh.
You have lots.
I can't wait to get my tote bag. All right. Thank you. That's excellent. We want to support Menlo Park and encourage biking. And it's good to know where we can find that information. All right, well, in the absence of any other reports, and thank you, Jackie, for, oh, and I meant to say, when she was talking about the moving blocks around, I was thinking, oh, Kevin, the back of your mind, like, it'd be fun to think of other community projects we want to get at community feedback where we can do the blocks again, because it sounds like it was a huge hit. And I do like that because there's so much collaboration you can do with words, but I think visually, it sounds like a very collaborative medium. All right, well, we will adjourn the meeting at 8:35 p.m. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.